Welcome back to the Investigator discussion series. I'm rather Incoherent, and this is Leo Anderson. Let's get right into it. He has a 4 in head and a 1 in foot. That's actually pretty below average in terms of total mythos stats at a total of just 5, but being part rogue, getting down to his deck building, Guardian 0 to 5, Rogue 0 to 2, he does have access to cards like Savant, and you handle this one, in addition to the standard Take the Initiative for Guardians, allowing him to handle that 1 foot relatively well. That part rogue is, in my opinion, nowhere near enough to use something like big money to fix his foot, but he has enough methods of dealing with it, and in general, foot is just slightly less bad to be weak at than head. That's just how the campaigns have shaken out, what the mythos tests tend to do. It's not like an inherent part of foot and head, it's just the way the game has been designed. So between card pool and the nature of mythos cards, 4 head is just better than 4 foot if you're using them strictly defensively, and he has plenty of solutions available to that card pool for the 1 foot. It's not good that he has a 1 foot. I'm not going to pretend that it's efficient to have 1 foot, but he has solutions to the problem. Coming to his proactive stats, he has 4 fist and 3 book. And again, I'm not going to pretend the 3 book is efficient. Leo can do a lot of things, but flex super effectively doesn't really feel like one of them. 3 book just isn't really enough to use it to find clues, and typically if you're trying to flex find clues as Guardian, using your book to do it the hard way is not the way you're going to handle it. Off-color green does not change that. Foot matters isn't available. Big money, like your ability, will be expensive. So when I look at Leo's proactive stats, I see 4 fist, which is totally workable in Guardian, and largely wasted 3 book. Leo's ability is reaction. After your turn begins, play an ally asset, reducing its cost by 1. That is a conditional extra action on your turns. It does require you to have a lot of ally assets in your deck if you want to get this even half of your turns. But it's also not just an extra action, it's an extra action and an extra resource. So if you're actually making use of this every turn somehow, it's the best ability in the game. You're not, that's not feasible, and if you were, you wouldn't be playing super high value allies, but when you are getting good value out of this, the value due to the extra resource is actually so high that it tends to do a lot of work, even though it will not be getting used every turn. It's still a pretty damn good ability thanks to that extra resource. Leo Star is +2, search the top 3 cards of your deck for an ally asset and draw it, shuffle your deck. A star that draws cards is typically good. A star that searches for cards would be even better, but it searches for specifically allies, and I've never seen a Leo deck that would even have a 50% chance of hitting this. So yeah, it's not a great star. It's a thematically appropriate star, it's not a blank star, but it's somewhere near the lower middle of the pack, right? Like around the 1/3 mark maybe. It's not an exceptional star by any stretch of the imagination. Leo Soak is 8/6, which is, good within the thick of it. You don't have a 5 anywhere, but honestly his Soak is largely immaterial because again, his ability is to play a lot of ally assets. You only have so many ally asset slots, which means you need to let them die, which means you have a ton of expendable Soak, and a Leo Soak is actually just about as relevant as Charlie Kane's Soak. That's not true. Charlie Kane wants to keep his allies alive very desperately. It's actually far less relevant than Charlie Kane's Soak. Leo Anderson's health and sanity may as well just be infinite. Coming over to his signatures, we have Mitch Brown. Mitch Brown is rock solid, commits for unexpected courage if you need that. He is a 3-cost ally asset, 2/2 Soak, and you have 2 additional ally slots, which can only be used to hold non-unique allies. So you can't like throw in Leo and Tetsuo to those slots, but you can absolutely throw in a Beat Cop and a Guard Dog. He's very, very good. It's not like Bonnie Clyde, where if Mitch Brown is in play, you're a tremendously better character, but you'll always be happy to have Mitch available. The signature for Leo is Bolt in Blood. You must either discard an ally asset you control from play, or discard every ally asset from your hand. And if nothing is discarded by this effect, shuffle Bolt in Blood back into your deck. There's some minor technicalities there that do matter. You're discarding, not defeating, so you don't trigger Tetsuo, you don't trigger the Jewel Encrusted Skull, I forget its name, Decorated Skull, Cursed Skull, whatever it is, the rogue card, that Leo can't get at level 3. So like there's some minor issues there that really don't matter too much about discarding, not defeating, but the main thing is with Bolt in Blood, you want to run more allies than you actually have slots for, because discarding an ally in play is tremendously worse than discarding an ally from hand. Ideally, when you're piloting Leo, you always want to have 1 ally exactly in your hand, and it's not going to be an important ally. That's not always gonna be the case. Sometimes there's all of this, you'll have multiple allies in hand and a Guard Dog with 1 health left, and discarding the Guard Dog is better. But the point of all this rambling is essentially, Bolt in Blood can be piloted around. It will do something, but on average with good piloting, it's probably less meaningful than any double action tax card. It's not that bad, and frankly I'd go so far as to say it's one of the softer weaknesses in the game. Now, coming over to Decklist, I'm going to show off 2 Leos today, and I'm going to briefly cover this MO Leo. A lot of the time when people talk about Leo, they talk up his ability to play a gun game. And that is true. Leo has access to contraband, which you can put under a stick to the plan, alongside of an extra ammo. You get any big gun into play, you put extra ammo on it to give it 3 more tokens. The next turn you put contraband on it to double its tokens. That's enough bullets to last you literally the whole scenario. And sure, it's a ton of resources. You're green, you have access to easy marks and Faustian bargains to easily fix any shortcomings the Guardian economy had, and then generate enough extra resources to cover all the allies you want in addition. Venturer is also just one of the better allies for a Leo, an ally that comes in, you need him to be there for 3 turns to get all of his supplies onto something else as an ammo, then you let him die as soak at the end of that, and you put a new ally into play. Expensive for most Guardians, but easily affordable for a rogue Guardian like Leo. So there's a lot of incentive here to run Leo as an ammo-based fighter. He also has access to Swift Reload, though I don't really think that's necessary or even particularly good in this sort of deck. You'll see I'm already at 43 experience, which even with Karen's Obel's kind of damn expensive. And because this isn't what I view as the optimal Leo, I've not made too much effort to cut it down. Because the issue I find with Flamethrower decks is just very frequently, not even necessarily Flamethrower, just generally the big guns package, is there's a lot of support pieces. You want the big guns, you want the things that put the ammo on the big guns. In this case, we're looking at charismas to put those Venturers into play. We're looking at contrabands and extra ammunitions, and the extra ammos do cost base experience, but this one-up contraband really does desperately want to be under stick to the plan, so we're looking at a lot of moving additional support pieces that go onto this, and it's not even clear that Flamethrower is your first upgrade, because just baseline beat cops and guard dogs are so good, especially with Leo's ability, that it's kind of hard to say that Flamethrower is transparently the best first upgrade, especially when you don't have the support package in play yet. Although I will note that Flamethrower combos incredibly well with Guard Dog level 2. There's a ton of incentive to play Ammo Leo. If you're looking to playing a big gun deck, Leo is probably one of the best people at playing that sort of deck. However, this is still a fairly experience-heavy package with a lot of moving pieces, and I don't think it's the strongest thing a Leo can do. This is a much more boring Leo, and I know at least half of you thought I was about to switch to a Runic Axe deck, but no. This is a very experienced cheap Leo, where what you're looking to do is get charismas, get beat gops and guard dogs, use machetes and survival knives, because again, machete has no real weakness with guard dog. It also combos very well. Survival knife's just baseline action efficient, and while machete survival knife is not like top tier on its own, when you have pseudo weapons in your ally slots with beat cop, guard dog, and even Leo DeLuca, because an action to swing is additional damage in your turn, it just turns out the machete survival knife is more than enough. You don't actually need much more than this to be a really, really effective fighter on Leo. And if I were playing a deck like this and I got another 20 experience, bet your bottom dollar I'm probably gonna randomly go into Flamethrower with all that extra experience. But for the majority of the campaign, the first 5 scenarios, I would be building into something like this. I just don't see a huge amount of reason to spend entire upgrades getting Flamethrowers when I can accomplish the same thing with less experience and less stress on my economy and support packages. And one of the reasons that I find myself not particularly fond of going for things like Flamethrower is that Flamethrower wants the extra ammo, the contraband, these support cards, and Leo already has so many cards he wants, even Venturer, although here we're running Leo DeLuca, you're still gonna find an ally. But because Leo wants these economy cards to help him run all of the allies he's gonna be running, you find yourself actually pretty tight on card slots on Leo. This deck is running Savant to help deal with its 1 foot. It's not running Take the Initiative. It is running Wolf Mask, so that's actually helpful. That's going to help mitigate damage from things like Grasping Hands, but it's also not running You Handle This One. It's very hard to fit everything you want into a Leo, and when your weapon package is taking up more card slots, it's eating away at your Mythos Resilience in a very meaningful way. Every card slot in Leo is really valuable to me, so spending more card slots to fulfill the same role at a similar level of effectiveness, to me, just doesn't really feel like it's worth it. Coming down to the level 0 deck, this is basically the same deck. I'm not running the E-Cache Ever Vigilant package, I'm running 2 Enchanted Blades for more consistent weapons. You can argue that like my economy is not good enough here. I might believe you. I might want to cut these Leo DeLucas for a You Handle This One, or emergency caches. There are a variety of ways you can adjust this, and I'm not rock solid in this starter deck, and it's one of these characters where I'm like, this character might look so different when Drowned City comes out, that I'm not super attached to hammering out what I think will be the perfect level 0 deck right now, because there's some really cool cards coming out, and I actually do need to talk about one, so spoiler warning for that if you really care, it is just a player card. In my last Drowned City spoiler review, I just forgot to talk about the Luger, and it's a very interesting card for a Leo DeLuca. It's a 2-cost hand asset, uses 2 ammo. The Lightning Bolt exhausts it and spend 1 ammo to fight, you get +1 for this attack. So it's just a free action plus 1 attack for 1 damage, and you only use it once a turn, obviously, because of exhaust, and then action, spend 1 resource, reload the gun, basically, and ready it. So you can shoot action to reload it, shoot again if you're not engaged, otherwise that will trigger an opportunity attack. But if you're doing that, it really is just a machete, right? With different conditions for dealing its 2 damage. You can't swing it over and over again, but this is a viable weapon in its own right if you're not engaged with the enemy. Big ass for Leo. But the main thing is this is lightning bolt damage. This is an interesting garrote wire equivalent card in a different slot, but one of the main reasons I never find myself running garrote wire is because it costs experience and competes with Lucky Cigarette Case. Competing with hand slots and rogue for fighters is actually less difficult to manage, and not costing experience is a big deal. Coming back over to the Leo deck, there's some really interesting stuff you can try to build around with that, where you're using Lugers and survival knives to theoretically deal 6 damage in a turn. You know, bandolier strats, it's a pipe dream, it's not going to be good. But like, I do want to look at that option in the near future. You have the option of building a deck that without taking an action can deal 6 damage using bandolier strats. And I genuinely don't know if Luger will make it into a final Leo deck, but with so much fight support expected for Michael McGlynn, I really can't find it in me to optimize Leo right now, because I know it's going to change so much in the near future, and this gets the point across for the deck. This is currently, and for a long while now, how I felt the best about Leo. In the past, I made the argument that Leo DeLuca plus Hallowed Mirror is actually a great way to build Leo. If your team needs it, build for that. Because if you take Hallowed Mirror level 3 and a Leo DeLuca, and your team contributes on fighting, so you're not doing the whole team worth of fighting, you're just killing a lot of guys, that's going to give you plenty of time to use Sylvan Melodies, shuffle them back into your deck, and actually play a meaningful healer for your team. I don't make my core decks assuming my team needs a dedicated healer on Leo, but it is actually something Leo can do better than almost any other Guardian fighter. And Leo is, in general, just pretty strong. He's resistant as hell to half the Mythos deck. 4 Fist, with an incentive to build for beat cops anyway, is more than enough with his weapons to reach reliable numbers. And really the issue with Leo primarily comes down to card slots. Your deck will do whatever you build it to do, it's just that because of your 1 foot and your 4 Fist and your desire to run a lot of allies, you have to cut something. Coming over to the tier list, I have Leo right at the top of my C tier. And honestly, as much as being in C tier hurts me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to put a character I like in C tier, and I do genuinely like Leo. He's always a character I'm happy to see on my team. He's not a character I think of as weak at all. The characters he's above are like Kohaku, very strong support, very disgusting work done with Spectral Razor. Preston Fairmont, just buying success on every test. Stella Clark, steamrolling the second half of a campaign. You know, problems in the first half, it's why she's this low, although I'm uniquely down on Stella within the community, I think. The people that Leo's right above are all pretty solid investigators. He's below Kaimani, who's just stupidly reliable. Same with Mandy, very different reasons. Charlie Kane and Silas Marsh have absolutely cracked top ends, and while their floors aren't the best, I think it's still better than the reliability of these characters. Hell, he's 5 spots under Carson right now, and Carson's a character where I fear that I may be severely underranking him to the point that he might be deserving of high A tier. So it's not that I don't think Leo's good. I think high C is a good character, very genuinely. It's just that in the grand scheme of things, compared to other investigators, I look at Leo Anderson, I'm like, yeah, he's solid. I don't look at Leo and like focus on dying to horror like Roland, or the fact that his ability does very little like Tommy. I look at Leo and I see a 4-Fist Guardian that has strengths and weaknesses. And does he impress me? Yeah, he absolutely does sometimes. But consistently, how impressive is he? Not that impressive. But I very rarely see a Leo that makes me think, wow, this guy's crazy. With anyone in B tier, they have turns where I watch them, they pop the fuck off, and I think, Jesus Christ, should I move them to A? And then I look at their average over the course of that scenario, over the course of the campaign, and I don't really think of that. But with Leo, the thing that happens with Leo is he has like a 12 ammo flamethrower. But then after he does that, where I think, holy shit, that's crazy, he just continues to function as like a pretty alright fighter with it. It doesn't actually do anything particularly crazy. I've consistently seen Leo be fine. I would never call Leo bad. There was a point much earlier in this video series where he was dancing around like here-ish back when this was the border to D tier, and I was unnecessarily down on Leo. So I guess when I say I would never call Leo bad, what I mean is in the past I called Leo bad, and I think that past version of me was wrong. But right now, I don't think Leo's a bad character in any capacity. I think it's easy to overfocus on his 1 foot. And I think it's easy to build him up to be more than he is with his ammo package. But I think on the whole, he's just a pretty reliable fighter. I don't find that his infinite soak with his ally assets is really all that impressive. And a lot of that comes down to there are just not that many allies where putting them into play and burning through them is particularly valuable. If there were 1 to 2 more cards on the level of guard cops, well, if there were 1 to 2 more cards on the level of guard dogs and beat cops, I would expect Leo to break into B with that level of additional support, because really that sort of matters a ton. It's a huge part of the appeal for the ammo package is that Venturer is sort of the next best expendable ally. On the whole, I find Leo good. I find him consistently better than what the campaign asks of you. That's more or less what C tier means. Low C tier means I think you're probably better than the campaign wants you to be most of the time. High C tier means I think you're going to consistently win the campaign. But I don't think you're doing it in impressive ways, and that is absolutely still true with Leo. Even at the top of C tier, I'm not impressed. I'm just fine with it. So on my end, it's late at night. I got home an hour ago at midnight. And tonight I finished a long-running Call of Cthulhu campaign. I was like, I'm only 20 minutes raw time into this recording. Something's wrong. What did I forget? I didn't cover the upgrade path. To quickly come to that, you want charisma pretty immediately. When you have Mitch Brown and you can get your guys in play, that's great. You can't rely on drawing Mitch Brown. The deck just doesn't have that kind of draw. You really want your 2 charismas immediately. If you have that, you can afford to play Mitch Brown, Leo DeLuca, and 3 of the 4 beat cops and guard dogs. Realistically, what you want to have is not necessarily that. You just want to be able to play like a Leo DeLuca and a beat cop and a guard dog. You don't really care about getting 5 in play. Having Mitch is nice, but you really care about being able to play 2 regardless of whether or not you hit Mitch. And this build, after the first charisma, I think I'd go for survival knives immediately. It's just fairly important to get those going. And honestly, because I'm a sucker for consistency, at that point I might go stick to the plan. I also might go guard dogs or beat cops. It really depends on how much experience I have on a given upgrade. I would never bank for stick to the plan. If I got 5 experience, I would probably pick up 2 beat cops and Ever Vigilant. I would always get beat cops before guard dogs. A level 0 guard dog is worse than a level 2 guard dog, absolutely, but it fulfills the same purpose of additional health soak and dealing reflect damage to enemies. A level 0 beat cop does not beat cop anymore. Like, you never discard a level 0 beat cop to kill a guy unless you absolutely have to. When you upgrade it and it deals 3 damage with its life instead of 1, it becomes tremendously better. So I would go beat cops before guard dogs. Beyond that, charisma is my #1 priority. Survival knives is my main weapons, #2 priority. And then at that point, it's beat cops, guard dogs, charismas. I can't really say that stick to the plans in the first 15 experience. Those allies, those charismas, those weapons, they're all so bloody important. And that totals up to 2, 4, 10, 18 experience there if you get all of that before stick to the plan. I don't necessarily think that's wrong. I just absolutely love stick to the plan. Even without doing the contraband stuff, eCash, Ever Vigilance, just so valuable in general. I will note, Ever Vigilance a lot worse in Leo than in many other Guardians, because in many other Guardians, you draw, any 3 of these 16 assets, you just play them. But in Leo, with your Ever Vigilant, this is really more like 9 assets. You don't care about these allies. You don't want to play them with Ever Vigilant because you want to use Leo's ability to get the resource. You don't want to waste Leo's ability by playing them with Ever Vigilant. So that does make me value getting a stick to plan a little bit less than I otherwise might. And this is a greedier deck than many Guardians. I'm not running stand-togethers. Like I said, it's just hard to fit everything you want in a Leo. And if it weren't for the Drowned City coming up, I'd spend a lot more time trying to hammer out what I view as a perfect Leo list, as opposed to giving the general vibe of, I'm happy with Survival Knife Leo. This is the cheapest method of reliable fighting in the game, of good action compression and good damage. You can just staple into a Guardian with minimal investment. And because you want these beat cops, these guard dogs, these charismas, just going for the cheapest good weapon tends to be what I view as best in Leo. And now that I've gone back and covered how I would upgrade this Leo, it's time to wrap this up. Still very short. Hope I didn't gloss over important things. I'm feeling like I must have, but I'm exhausted, so I'm gonna call it here. I've been Rather Incoherent. Thank you for your time. If you made it this far, then please do hit all the buttons to make the algorithm happy. And a massive thank you to everyone who supports this channel, both on YouTube as channel members and on Patreon as patrons. I'll see all of you in the next one.